My name's Sonjia and this is my channel, See It Then, See It Now. Before we get into today's video, I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody who watched my last video. It got a great response and I really do appreciate it, so thank you so much. If you did see that video, then you'll know that this video is to show you how I made the flowers that went into the piece of artwork in the last video. And if you're still keeping up with me, before we start this one, I just want to say that after editing this one, I've decided I should have called myself the Clumsy Crafter. You'll see why. To make these small pink flowers, I rolled out the clay and took a flower cutter and cut out the flower shapes. A sprinkle of corn flour in the flower mould stops the clay from sticking. I lined up the petals, and I found that the mould makes a better flower if you push the centre of the clay down into the mould before pressing the two sides together. When you open it up, you have a beautiful flower. They're very easy to make. If you roll the clay too thick or press the flower press together too hard, you end up with it squishing out too much and your petals will have a lip on them, like this one, but you need to avoid making the petals too thin because they will break really easily. To paint the flowers, I use metallic pink and white acrylic paint. I put the pink paint in the centre and dragged it outwards. I then took some white with the same brush and just dragged the brush into the pink and the white out towards the edge of the petal. If I had too much white, I popped a bit more pink on and I repeated the process until I was happy with the look. I then repeated the same on the back of the flower. I'm going to make some more clay roses and I'm going to show you how to do it. Now I have been online and learnt how to do this because it was new to me and it does take a bit of practice. So I'm kind of still in the practice stage, but I am getting better at them. Here's one that I've already painted up. And here's one, look, she says falling off a chair. Here's one that I painted as well. There are loads of YouTube videos out there on how to make roses. I will link the ones I found the most useful. One thing that is very useful is if you put your rose on a wire. You can stick the wire into foam while the clay is wet and stop it from touching anything or spoiling its shape. On the videos I watched, they used a longer wire, but the wire I'm using is thin and a bit bendy, so I found it easier to put it on a shorter wire. Once you have cut the wire, you need to put a small loop in the top. Taking a small piece of clay, I rolled it into a bud shape and dipped the loop of the wire into the glue. I then pushed the wire into the bottom of the bud and then I put this to one side to dry. I did try using it while it was still wet, but it's much easier if you let it dry first. To start the flower, I needed to cut some small petals, and then as the flower grows, the petals need to get bigger. Once I'd cut the petals, I popped them between plastic just to try and keep them from starting to dry out. Now for the fun part, we get to start building this flower up. So the first thing I did was I put the petal into this petal veiner, push the two parts together, and it puts the imprint all over the clay, like the petal imprint all over the clay. I love it. I think it's great. It just makes it look more realistic, more like a petal. So with the first one, I painted the bud with glue all over and then I placed the petal on and I wrapped it around so that it was more or less completely covering the bud, so you couldn't really see any of the bud, just the petal wrapping around. And this is what I was saying about having the wire. You can just pop it into there and it keeps it elevated and you don't damage your wet clay. With the second petal, I pressed it to get the imprint the same way as I did the first. I put glue on the bud the same way as I did the first, and then I wrapped this petal, but I did it from the opposite side of the first petal, and I also left it slightly more open at the top of the bud so a little bit more was showing rather than having it completely closed up like I did the first one. With the next petal, I started wrapping it around from where the last petal finished, but I just overlapped the last petal slightly and I left it a bit more open again so that the centre of the flower starts to show. I continued the same process with each petal, always placing glue on either the flower or the petal, always positioning the petal where the last finished with a slight overlap and leaving the top more and more open each time so the flower became more open with each petal. Once I had the small petals on, I moved up to the medium-sized petals. Once I'd got the medium-sized petals on, I moved up to the large petals. So with this flower, I used 5 small petals, 7 medium petals and 4 large petals. But it depends on what size you're making the flowers, because I made lots of different sizes, and some I only used small petals because it was more like a bud, and then some I just used small and medium just to make it that bit bigger, and then I had a couple of really big ones where I used large petals as well. When I got to the larger petals, I curled the edges using whatever this tool is. It came with some clay tools, I don't know what to call it. If you know what it's called, feel free to let me know in the comments. I curled the edges over and it just helps to make the petals look more open when you put them on the flower. And if you use a tool to curl them, the curls seem to stay in the clay much better than if you try and just curl it with your fingers. Oops, that one was the one that wasn't dry. For the white roses, I painted them all over with white acrylic paint. I then went over with a little bit of 3D Pearl Effects in clear, and then I just highlighted them a little bit with some silver acrylic paint. For the pink roses, I mixed burnt sienna with the pink metallic that I'd used on the little pink flowers. I mixed the two together just to tone the pink down and make it a little bit not quite as bright. I then painted the deepest parts of the rose with this colour, and then while the paint was still wet, I painted the ends of the petals with some white, and then I mixed the two together by dragging the dark colour up into the white, and I continued to do this and blend the two colours together until I was happy with the way that it looked. On to painting the blue roses now, and I used the exact same technique as I did with the pink ones. I used primary blue in the deepest parts of the flower, used acrylic white and blended the two together until I was happy with the look. So we've got those flowers here for me to make a design down this side, but I need to do something with these stems to make them more like stems instead of pink wires coming out the bottom. There isn't that much wire stem showing. There is little bits of stem showing in the design, but if you look you can see bits of it, so I want to do this just in case any bits are showing. I don't want this pink wire showing. So I didn't know if this was going to work, but it actually worked really well. But all I did was put the textured paint, same textured paste that I used on the stencils, I put it onto the wires to create these stems. And what's really good is that there's still bend in it. Even though I did this days ago, there is still a little bit of bend, so when I come to put the design on, if I'm wanting to alter the shape of the stem, it's not going to be a problem because it's still bendy. So let's put all these leaves and flowers out the way. And I don't want to get anything on my board. Using a palette knife, I wrapped the textured paste around the pink wire until they were completely covered, and it was a little bit fiddly, and I seem to find that this twisting it around kind of technique thing that I've got going on here seemed to work the best to get them covered. Once the textured paste was dry, I painted the stems green and then highlighted one or two areas with a little bit of silver. To make the small blue flowers, I cut out the clay using a small flower cutter, and then using the flat side of this tool, I placed the flowers on a soft surface and flattened each petal. It will work if you put the flower in the palm of your hand too, it just doesn't work very well if it's on a hard surface. For the painting of these little blue ones, I pretty much used the same technique as I did with the other flowers. I started with a darker blue in the middle. This colour is called Opaque, and then I put some white on my brush and I dragged it out so that it went paler towards the edges, and I just blended it through until I was happy with the look. The only difference with this one is that I did then go around the outer edge of the flower and painted that in the same blue as the centre, just to make them a little bit different. For the leaves, I cut the clay using leaf cutters in different sizes. The cutters left tiny bits of clay around the edges and I wasn't happy with that, so I used a wet paintbrush and just got rid of all the little bits and tidied up the edges a little. Once I was happy with that, I put the clay into the leaf veiner, I pushed the two parts together to get the imprint, and then I shaped the leaf just so that it wasn't flat, just to give it some shape, and I altered the way that I shaped these each time. So some I did more flat, some I did more curved, some I bent the centre more, just to make them all a little bit different. Those of you that's watched other videos that I've done will know that I'm really good at deciding that I don't like the colour of something and changing the colour. But I've even astounded myself this time. So I painted the leaves green, and then I felt like it was too bright, so I painted them this colour and put some silver on top. It was like a dark blue with like a silver over the top. Then I decided these were too dark, so I painted them lighter. So I went green, then I went with this, then I went with that. Then I decided that it's still too dark, started painting them all slightly lighter still. But then I decided, and I quite like that one, and I tried one that was a bit more purpley and a bit more blue. I really like this one. The only thing is I feel like it's a bit lost within the blue flower. It's a little bit too samey. This one's not so bad, but again I feel like it's a little bit samey. So what have I done? I've gone back to green and put silver over the top. It looks really pretty. So to get this green, I've mixed a little tiny bit of this really dark blue with sap green. I've mixed the two together and I'm just painting it on. Oops. And then I'm going over it with silver. Now let's make our little emoji dizzy. Some glue on. Try not to chuck it all over the table like I did. Oops. Oops. Oh no, 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 no. Oh. So there you have it, 48 clumsy crafter moments, unless I've missed any. If you spot any others, do let me know in the comments. Let's have a reminder and see it then. And you've seen it before, but let's see it now. I loved making this project and the end result is so beautiful. I do get some lovely comments, but I'd love to know what you think, so do leave me a comment. You can hit the like button as well. I have got an update of how we're getting on with the guest bedroom coming up very soon, so if you don't want to miss that, then make sure you subscribe. I also have lots of good stuff planned, so hit that subscribe button too. You feel free to follow me on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.